Good evening, class. Tonight I am going to discuss about the pre-design services. Under SPP Document 201, replacing the 1978 UAP Document 201. Pre-design services, the basic services provided by the architect have remained relatively unchanged over the years. However, the architect must expand his services in response to the increasing demands of his clients, the evolution of new standards regulated by the professional practice, and the advancement of technology and the enactment of new laws. It will be the most advantageous to the client to involve the architect in the earliest stage of the project, since the architect, if suitably experienced, can provide the client with objective project analysis, establishing parameters to optimize building needs vis-a-vis available resources. Scope of pre-design services. The pre-design services cover a broad line of architectural services ranging from initial problem identification to activities that would allow architect to initially conceptualize an array of architectural and allied solutions. Pre-design services include consultation, feasibility studies, pre-feasibility studies, site selection and analysis, site utilization and land use studies, architectural programming, space planning, space management studies, value management, design brief preparation, promotional services, and other related activities. So first, what is consultation? So consultation is when a client calls upon the architect to give oral or written advice and direction, or to attend conferences, to make evaluations and appraisals regarding contemplated projects and similar activities. The architect renders valuable inputs whether or not the client pursues the project. So that's consultation. The client would pay you per hour or per hour output. Second, pre-feasibility studies. These preliminary studies involves the document analysis and use of secondary information gathered for the project to aid the client in early discussion making. They represent the architect's initial assessments of project soundness, allowing the client to promptly explore available readily identifiable directions or options. So researched, processed, validated secondary data are generally used for such studies. Example, electronic or print or etc. So that's a pre-feasibility studies. So before the feasibility studies, when you conduct the research, or gather information for the project. So third, feasibility studies. Detailed analysis of the project based on pre-feasibility studies will determine the viability of the proposed development. The studies will set the project against present and future trends to forecast how it will perform over time. This requires primary data gathering and analysis. Fourth, a site selection and analysis. This entails the formulation of site criteria, assistance to client in site evaluation, as well as analysis to determine the most appropriate sites for a proposed project or building program. Fifth, site utilization and land use studies. The detailed analysis of the site involves the identification of a site's development potentials through the proper utilization of land. The analysis covers the context of site as well as of its surrounding environment and the development controls that apply to the site and its environs. 6. Architectural research. Architectural research entails the conduct of primary and secondary researchers and assembled facts used as basis for conclusion. Then 7th, architectural programming. This analytical problem-seeking process will lead to the statement and identification of both horizontal and vertical requirements in offering a solution. It incorporates a space program with characterizations of the envisioned spaces such as ambience, cost range, etc. Space planning. The architect determines the adequate size and appropriate configuration and assemblage for a proposed project in consideration of the use, location, and interface of spaces for given activities. So space planning is done mainly through primary data gathering such as interviews, consultation, interfaces, focus group discussions, space planning surveys, space audits, and subsequent analysis such as spatial layouts with stacking concepts, particularly for multi-story structures. And next is the space management studies. An analysis of the space requirements of the project based on organizational structure and functional setup pinpoints linkages and interaction of spaces. The formulation of the space program will serve as the basis for the development of the architectural plan or design. Then next is the value management. This technique is applied in cost management process to minimize the negative effect of simplified operations associated with many cost reduction programs. The goal of the value management is to achieve an impaired program at minimum cost. Thus, a plan, design, or system that has been successfully valued managed will still satisfy the same performance criteria as the costlier alternative. 11th, design brief preparation. Under design brief preparation, the architect states the project terms of reference, including the concepts, objectives, and other necessary requirements to bid out architectural services, whether public or private. And then promotional services. Projects may require promotional activities in order to develop and general financial support and acceptance from governing agencies or from the general public. In such cases, the architect can act as an agent of the owner by producing and coordinating the additional activities necessary to complete the service. In all such activities, the architect must maintain his professional status as the representative of the owner. And then the manner of providing services under pre-designed services is after the initial meeting or conversation, correspondence with the client, the architect must submit his proposal for the pre-designed services stating the following. So the scope of work, the manner of payment, the owner's responsibilities, and other conditions of the services. So you're gonna make the contract. The architect can render services in any of the following ways. First, as an individual architect, he must have a special training and knowledgeable in different fields to supplement his skills. And second, architects' own staff. If possible, for architects as natural persons working in a single firm to specialize in a variety of ways, many architects and firms, juridical persons, specialized without losing the generalist approach of the architect or firm. By association, consultation, or networking. Another common practice is consultation between architect and a firm of other disciplines. So under the extended terms of owner-architect agreement. Method of compensation. The architect's compensation is based on the architect's architectural firm's talents, skills, experience, imagination, and on the type and level of professional services provided. The compensation for pre-designed services may be based on one or more of the following. So you can use multiple of direct personal expenses, professional fee plus expenses, lump sum or fixed fee, per dime, honorarium plus reimbursable expenses, and mixed method of compensation. Multiple of direct personal expenses. It is a cost-based method of compensation applicable only to non-creative work such as accounting, secretarial research, data gathering, preparation of reports, and the like. So this method of compensation is based on technical hours spent and does not account for creative work, since the value of creative design cannot be measured by length of time and the designer spent on his work. The length of time the designer has spent on his work. So example computation, you add all cost of technical services. So man hours times rate, and then multiply it by a multiplier to cover overhead and profit. The multiplier ranges from 1.5 to 2.5 depending on the office setup, overhead and experience of the architect, and complexity of project. So, for example, an architect spent 300 hours on the promotional services of a certain project, and he charges his hourly rate to 500 per hour, and he will use 1.5 multiplier because he is just starting on his career. So, the given are the total hours spent, which is 300, and the hourly rate of the architect, which really depend on the architect on how he value his hour. So on the example, he rate his hour to 500 per hour, and the multiplier is 1.5. So the computation is 300 times 500. The result is 150,000, and the 150,000 you multiply it by 1.5. The total charge for his service rendered under promotional services is 225,000 pesos. Other items such as cost of transportation, living and housing allowances of foreign consultants, out-of-town living and housing allowances of the local consultants, and the like are to be charged to the client. It is very important that at the start of the commission, the architect shall inform the client or make known to the client the rate of professionals and personnel who will be assigned to the project and the multiplier that has to be applied before agreeing on this method of compensation. So you have to inform your clients your charges, your rates before starting the project so that it would be fair for him or her. So the formula, you assume that A is the architect's rate per hour, and C is the consultant's rate per hour, and T is the rate per hour of technical staff, researchers, and others involved in the project. So AN, CN, and TN is the total number of hours spent by the architect, consultants, and technical staff. So you have to account the the duration. It's very important to take into account the hours spent on each project when you are using this type of method of compensation. And M is the multiplier to account for the overhead and reasonable profit. Since this is business, so you have to put profit on every services that you are rendering. So the value may range from 1.5 to 2.5 depending on the set of the architect's office and complexity of the project. And R is the reimbursable expenses such as transportation, housing, and living allowance of consultant, transportation per dime, housing and living allowance of local consultants and technical staff if the project is over 100 kilometer from the area of operation of the architect. And the cost, you also add the cost of printing of extra set of drawings, reports, maps, and contract documents. If it's over the standard copy of 5 copies submitted to the client. So you will charge the client if it's over 5 set of copies of the documents. So overseas and local distance calls, technical and laboratory tests, licenses, fees, taxes, and similar cost items needed by the project, you also add that one. And the formula would be the direct cost. Okay, so direct cost is the total of the hour, the total. So for example, direct cost. The direct cost is the total number of hours spent by the architect, the consultant, and the staff to the project, the directly to the project. Then the fee would be the direct cost multiply with the multiplier for the overhead and other indirect expenses. And if there are reimbursable items such as airfare that the architect have paid, so he can charge it to the client on top of the fee. Then the next method of compensation is the professional fee plus expenses. This method of compensation is frequently used when there is continuing relationship involving a series of projects. So it establishes a fixed sum over and above reimbursement for the architect's technical time and overhead. An agreement on the general scope of the work is necessary in order to set an equitable fee. So the architect would set a his professional fee, and then if, let's say, for example, he would he for example, a site selection service, then he would compute the professional fee, his professional fee for that, and then whatever expenses that would come along during the duration of the project, he would add it up on his professional fee for as long as it is stipulated on the agreement or contract, and it was approved or agreed upon by the client. And the third method of compensation is the lump sum or fixed fee. So this method may be applied to government projects since they entail more paperwork and time-consuming efforts. So this type of compensation method, the architect should compute all the possible costs that would come during the project, because it's very hard to uh, it's very hard to change the fees when it comes to government projects. So the fourth is for per diem honorarium plus reimbursable expenses. In some cases, a client may request an architect to do work which will require his professional time, such as first, attending project-related meetings, conferences, or trips on his behalf, and then second, conducting ocular inspection of possible project sites, and third, conferring with others regarding the prospective investments or ventures and the like. So for these particular activities, the architect as agent of the owner may be paid on a per diem and honorarium basis plus out-of-pocket expenses such as, but not limited to, travel, accommodation, and subsistence. And the fifth mixed method of compensation, you can mix any of the mentioned four compensation method of compensation. So the STP provides for more than one method of compensation on a project. So each project be examined to determine the most appropriate and equitable method of compensation. Okay, so that's the end of the lecture for pre-design services. I will see you on our synchronous class next week to answer your consultation, to answer your questions during our consultation time. So watch out for the I would give assignments related to this topic. So so be prepared for that. After I post this this lecture video to our group, then the assignment would your homework would follow. Okay, so I hope you would submit your homework on time, and if there are questions, you can ask them during our synchronous class. Okay, so good night, class, and I hope to see you next synchronous class, and keep safe always.